Jeanette Walls, pages 40 to 45. We don't have any lizards either, she said. I went home and told Mom. We needed to get a no-pest strip like Carla's family, but she refused. If it kills the flies, she said, it can't be very good for us. Dad bought a souped-up old Ford Fairlane that winter, and one weekend when the weather got cold, he announced we were going swimming at the Hot Pot. The Hot Pot was a natural sulfur spring in the desert north of town, surrounded by craggy rocks and quicksand. The water was warm to the touch and smelled like rotten eggs. It was so full of minerals that rough, chalky incrustations had built up along the edges like a coral reef. Dad was always saying we should buy the Hot Pot and develop it as a spa. The deeper you went into the water, the hotter it got. It was very deep in the middle. Some people around Battle Mountain said the Hot Pot had no bottom at all, that it went clean through to the center of the earth. A couple of drunks and wild teenagers had drowned there, and people at the Owl Club said when their bodies floated back up to the surface, they'd been literally boiled. Both Brian and Lori knew how to swim, but I'd never learned. Large bodies of water scared me. They seemed unnatural, oddities in the desert towns where we lived. We had once stayed in a motel with a swimming pool, and I worked up enough nerve to make my way around the entire length of the pool, clinging to the side. But the Hot Pot didn't have any neat edges like that swimming pool. There was nothing to cling to. I waded in up to my shoulders. The water around my chest was warm, and the rocks I was standing on felt so hot I wanted to keep moving. I looked back at Dad, who watched me unsmiling. I tried to push out into deeper water, but something held me back. Dad dived in and splashed his way toward me. You're going to learn to swim today, he said. He put an arm around me, and we started across the water. Dad was dragging me. I felt terrified and clutched his neck so tightly that his skin turned white. There, that wasn't so bad, was it? Dad asked when we got to the other side. We started back, and this time when we got to the middle, Dad pried my fingers from around his neck and pushed me away. My arms flailed around, and I sank into the hot, smelly water. I instinctively breathed in. Water surged into my nose and mouth and down my throat. My lungs burned. My eyes were open, the sulfur stinging them, but the water was dark, and my hair was wrapped around my face, and I couldn't see anything. A pair of hands grabbed me around the waist. Dad pulled me into the shallow water. I was spitting and coughing and breathing in uneven, choking gasps. That's okay, Dad said. Catch your breath. When I recovered, Dad picked me up and heaved me back into the middle of the hot pot. Sink or swim, he called out. For the second time, I sank. The water once more filled my nose and lungs. I kicked and flailed and thrashed my way to the surface, gasping for air, and reached out to Dad, but he pulled back and I didn't feel his hands around me until I sunk one more time. He did it again and again until the realization that he was rescuing me only to throw me back into the water took hold. And so rather than reaching for Dad's hands, I tried to get away from them. I kicked out of it, pushed away through the water with my arms, and finally I was able to propel myself beyond his grasp. You're doing it, baby, Dad shouted. You're swimming. I staggered out of the water and sat on the calcified rocks, my chest heaving. Dad came out of the water, too, and tried to hug me, but I wouldn't have anything to do with him or with Mom, who'd been floating on her back as if nothing was happening, or with Brian and Lori, who gathered around and were congratulating me. Dad kept telling me that he loved me, that he would never let me drown, but you can't cling to the side your whole life. That one lesson every parent needs to teach a child is, if you don't want to sink, you better figure out how to swim. With what other reason, he asked, would possibly make him do this? Once I got my breath back, I figured he must be right. There was no other way to explain it. Bad news, Lori said one day when we got home from exploring. Dad lost his job. Dad had kept this job for nearly 6 months, longer than any other. I figured we were through with Battle Mountain and that within a few days we'd be on the move again. I wonder where we'll live next, I said. Lori shook her head. We're staying here, she said. Dad insisted he hadn't exactly lost his job. He had arranged to have himself fired because he wanted to spend more time looking for gold. He had all sorts of plans to make money. She added inventions he was working on, odd jobs he lined up, but for the time being, things might get a little tight around the house. We'll all have to help out, Lori said. I thought of what I could do to contribute besides collecting bottles and scrap metal. I'll cut the prices on my rocks, I said. Lori paused and looked down. I don't think that's going to be enough, she said. I guess we can eat less, I said. We have before, Lori said. We did eat less. Once we lost our credit at the commissary, we quickly ran out of food. Sometimes one of Dad's odd jobs would come through, or he'd win some money gambling, and we'd eat for a few days. Then the money would be gone and the refrigerator would be empty again. Whenever we were out of food, Dad was always there, full of ideas and ingenuity. He'd find a can of tomatoes on the back of a shelf that everyone else had missed, or he'd go off for an hour and come back with an armful of vegetables, never telling us where he got them, and whip up a stew. But now he began disappearing a lot. "Where's Dad?" Maureen asked all the time. She was a year and a half old, and these were almost her first words. "Oh, he's out finding us food and looking for work," I'd say, but I wondered if he really didn't want to be around us, unless he could provide for us. I tried to never complain. If we asked Mom about food in a casual way because we didn't want to cause any trouble, she'd simply shrug and say she could make something out of nothing. We kids usually kept our hunger to ourselves, but we were always thinking of food and how to get our hands on it. During recess at school, I'd slip back into the classroom and find something in some other kid's lunch bag that wouldn't be missed, a package of crackers, an apple, and I'd gulp it down so quickly I would barely be able to taste it. If I was playing in a friend's yard, I'd ask if I used the bathroom. And if no one was in the kitchen, I'd grab something out of the refrigerator or cupboard and take it into the bathroom and eat it there, always making a point of flushing the toilet before leaving. Brian was scavenging too. One day I discovered him upchucking behind our house. I wanted to know how he could be spewing like that when we hadn't eaten in days. He told me he'd broken into a neighbor's house and stolen a gallon jar of pickles. The neighbor had caught him, but instead of reporting him to the cops, he made Brian eat the entire jar full as a punishment. I had to swear I wouldn't tell Dad. A couple of months later, after Dad lost his job, he came home with a big bag of groceries, a can of corn, a half-gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, 2 tins of deviled ham, a sack of sugar, and a stick of margarine. The can of corn disappeared within minutes. Somebody in the family had stolen it, and no one except the thief knew who. But Dad was too busy making deviled ham sandwiches to launch an investigation. We ate our fill that night, washing down the sandwiches with big glasses of milk. When I got back from school the next day, I found Lori in the kitchen eating something out of a cup with a spoon. I looked in the refrigerator. There was nothing inside but a half-gone stick of margarine. "Lori, what are you eating?" "Margarine," she said. A wrinkle on my nose. "Really?" "Well, yeah," she said. "Mix it with sugar. It tastes just like frosting." I made some. It didn't taste like frosting. It was sort of crunchy because the sugar didn't dissolve, and it was greasy and left a filmy coat in my mouth. But I ate it all anyway. When Mom got home that evening, she looked in the refrigerator. "What happened to the stick of margarine?" she asked. "We ate it," I said. Mom got angry. She was saving it, she said, to butter the bread. "We already ate all the bread," I said. Mom said she was thinking of baking some bread if a neighbor would loan us some flour. I pointed out that the gas company had turned off our gas. "Well," Mom said, "we should have saved the margarine just in case the gas gets turned back on. Miracles happen, you know." It was because of my and Lori's selfishness, she said, that if we had any bread, we'd have to eat without that butter. Mom wasn't making any sense to me. I wondered if she'd been looking forward to eating the margarine herself. And that made me wonder if she was the one who'd stolen the can of corn the night before, which got me a little mad. "It was the only thing to eat in the whole house," I said. Raised my voice. I added, "I was hungry." Mom gave me a startled look. I'd broken one of our unspoken rules. We're always supposed to pretend our life was one long, incredibly fun adventure. She raised her hand, and I thought she was going to hit me, but then she sat down at the school table and rested her head on her arms. Her shoulders started shaking. I went over and touched her arm. "Mom?" I said. She shook off my hand, and when she raised her head, her face was swollen and red. "It's not my fault you're hungry," she shouted. "Don't blame me. You think I like living like this, do you?" That night when Dad came home, he and Mom got into a big fight. Mom was screaming that she was tired of getting all the blame for everything that went wrong. "How did this become my problem?" she shouted. "Why aren't you helping? You spend your whole day at the Owl Club. You act like it's not your responsibility." Dad explained he was out trying to earn money. He had all sorts of prospects he was going on the brink of realizing. Problem was, he needed cash to make them happen. There was a lot of gold in Battle Mountain, but it was trapped in the ore. It's not like there were gold nuggets lying around for the prospector to sort through. He was perfecting a technique by which the gold could be leached out of the rock by processing it with a cyanide solution. But that took money. Dad told Mom she needed to ask her mother for the money to fund the cyanide leaching process he was developing. "You want me to beg for my mother again?" Mom asked. "God damn it, Rosemary. It's not like we're asking for a handout," he yelled. "She'd be making an investment." "Grandma was always lending us money," Mom said, and she was sick of it. Mom told Dad that Grandma said that if we couldn't take care of ourselves, we could go live in Phoenix in her house. "Well, maybe we should," Mom said. That got Dad really angry. "Are you saying I can't take care of my own family?" "Ask them," Mom snapped. We kids were sitting in the old passenger benches. Dad turned to me. I studied the scuff marks on the floor. Their argument continued the next morning. We kids were downstairs lying in our boxes listening to them fighting upstairs. Mom was carrying on about how things had gotten so desperate around the house she didn't have anything to eat except margarine, and now that was gone too. She was sick, she said, of Dad's ridiculous dreams and his stupid plans and his empty promises. I turned to Lori, who was reading the book. Tell them that we like eating margarine. I said, tell them, maybe they'll stop fighting. Lori shook her head. That'll make Mom think we're taking Dad's side. She said, it'll only make it worse. Let them work it out. I knew Lori was right. The only thing to do when Mom and Dad fought was to pretend it wasn't happening or act like it didn't matter. Pretty soon to be friends again, kissing and dancing in each other's arms, but this particular argument just would not stop. After going on about the margarine, they started fighting about whether or not some painting Mom had done was ugly. Then they argued about whose fault it was we lived like we did. Mom told Dad he should get another job. Dad said if Mom wanted someone in the family to be punching a time clock, then she could get a job. She had a teaching degree, he pointed out. She could work instead of sitting around on her butt all day painting pictures no one ever wanted to buy. Van Gogh didn't sell any paintings either. Mom said, I'm an artist. Fine. Dad said, then quit your damn belly aching or go pedal your ass at the Green Lantern. Mom and Dad shouting so loud you could hear it throughout the whole neighborhood. Lori, Brian, and I looked at one another. Brian nodded at the front door, and we all went outside and started making sandcastles for scorpions. We figured if we were all in the yard acting like the fighting was no big deal, maybe the neighbors would feel the same way. But the screaming continued. Neighbors started gathering on the street. Some were simply curious. Moms and dads got into arguments all the time in Battle Mountain, so it didn't seem that big of a deal, but this fight was raucous even by local standards. And some people thought they should step in and break it up. Let them work out their differences, one of the men said. No one's got a right to interfere. So they leaned back against car fenders and fence posts or sat on pickup tailgates as if they were at a rodeo. Suddenly, one of Mom's oil paintings came flying through an upstairs window. Next came her easel. The crowd below scurried back to avoid getting hit. Then Mom's feet appeared in the window, followed by the rest of her body. She was dangling from the second floor, her legs swinging wildly. Dad was holding her by the arms while she tried to hit him in the face. Help! Mom screamed. He's trying to kill me. God damn it, Rosemary, get back in here, Dad said. Don't hurt her, Lori yelled. Mom was swinging back and forth. Her yellow cotton dress had gotten bunched up around her waist, and the crowd could see her white underwear. They were sort of old and baggy, and I was afraid they might fall off altogether. Some of the grown-ups called out, worried that Mom might fall, but one group of kids thought that Mom looked like a chimpanzee swinging from a tree, and then began making monkey noises and scratching their armpits and laughing. Brian's face turned dark, and his fists clenched up. I felt like punching him too, but I pulled Brian back. Mom was thrashing around so hard that her shoes fell off. It looked like she might slip from Dad's grasp or pull him out the window. Lori turned to Brian and me. Come on. We ran up the stairs, and held onto Dad's legs so that Mom's weight wouldn't drag her through the window as well. Finally, he pulled Mom back inside. She collapsed on the floor. He tried to kill me, Mom sobbed. Your father wants to watch me die. I didn't push her, Dad protested. I swear to God I didn't. She jumped. He was standing over Mom, holding out his hands, palms up, pleading his innocence. Lori stroked Mom's hair and dried her tears. Brian leaned against the wall and shook his head. Everything's okay now, I said over and over again. The next morning, instead of sleeping late, the way she usually did, Mom got up with us kids and walked over to the Battle Mountain Intermediate School, which was across the street from the Mary S. Black Elementary School. She applied for a job and was hired right away since she had a degree, and there were never enough teachers in Battle Mountain. The few teachers the town did have were not exactly the pick of the litter, as Dad liked to say, and despite the shortage, one would get fired from time to time. A couple of weeks earlier, Miss Page had gotten the axe when the principal caught her toting a loaded rifle down the school hall. Miss Page said all she wanted to do was motivate her students to do their homework. Lori's teacher had stopped showing up around the same time Miss Page was fired, so Mom was assigned to teach Lori's class. Her students really liked her. She had the same philosophy about educating children that she had about rearing them. She thought rules, discipline held people back, and felt that the best way to learn or let children fulfill their potential was by providing freedom. She didn't care if her students were late or didn't do their homework. If they wanted to act out, that was fine with her as long as they didn't hurt anyone else. Mom was all the time hugging her students and letting them know how wonderful and special she thought they were. She'd tell the Mexican kids never to let anyone say they weren't as good as white kids.